Our next speaker may need no introduction. His name is Chris DiBona. He is with Google, and Google's been taking a bit of a hard time, but I occasionally defend Google, and people ask me, like, is it because you're scared of Google? And I'm like, no, it's because I'm scared of Chris. Without further ado, Chris DiBona.
Thanks. So, hi. I'm going to use Josh's slides instead of my own. I like them better. So I wanted to tell you a little bit of what I've learned about open source software. I'm going to talk about Google in a little bit. There'll be plenty of time for questions. But a lot of people have been talking today about, the proper administration of open source software, getting into open source software, developing open source software, and this is the most important thing. One, you just need a little bit of quiet. Any studies of programmer productivity always start with just tell everyone to shut up, leave you alone, get into your flow state, and be creative with your computer. Be creative with your compiler. Use great tools like GCC, Python, Perl, whatever it takes. Figure out what people want. Or more importantly, if you're an open source developer, what you want to develop. You can get this inspiration from Reddit. You can get it from some flame war. You can get it from wherever. But what matters is that you want to do it. I'm trying to remember to go backwards. Then throw it over the wall. Okay? Go start up a project on SourceForge or code.google.com or GitHub and put your code up there. Not because anyone's going to care or look at it or pay attention to it. They won't. It takes on average about 2 years before a new project gets any outside attention of any kind. Patches, bug reports, someone bitching at you, you name it. Much less a community, much less actual press activity. So throw it over the wall. Throw it over the wall. Those of you who are just walking in, I'm doing Josh's slides backwards. There is one bit of legalese you need, and it's called a license, right? If you want to have the best time, in my opinion, writing software, you need one of the fabulous, prominent, and popular open source licenses. The rest of the legalese is all pretty much bullshit. As a company, sometimes you want a CLA. We made ours a click-through at Google to make it very, very easy. But if you're just starting a project or if you're just kicking one off in your company, keep it to a minimum. You'll be fine. And if a lawyer starts freaking out, here's what you do. And here's what I do at Google. I say, okay, you can have whatever you want, but you're on a 3-day deadline. If somebody wants to release a patch, you have to come back within 3 days with a really good reason why not. They're like, we can't come back in 3 days. That's too soon. I'm like, well, why not? They're like, well, we have other things to do. Are they more important than this? Yes. Then go away. They're like, but the risk. And I'm like, at Google, for instance, we've been doing this for about, we've had a program of release now for about 5.5 years. We've released about 17 million lines of code. Not all of it useful. And I haven't been deposed any more or less than I would be otherwise. So, in fact, my first deposition is coming up pretty soon. And that's not a big deal. Google's huge, right? My first deposition? I was sued like 4 times when I was at VA. No. So a little bit of legalese that won't kill you, but the only thing of legalese that actually matters is your source code license. And, by the way, if you don't want to spend too much time on governance and all that BS, just pick a permissive license, because control comes with the viral licenses. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I mean, I love the GPL, really. We usually use Apache, though, because I don't want to go out there and police the hell out of things, and we're trying to push platforms, right? So we want people to just flourish. So for instance, when Arcos decided they wanted to make a little video player with Android, they just took it. They didn't talk to us. They didn't want to, right? They just wanted to develop their own thing, and they did, right? When Barnes & Noble, actually, when they were building the Nook, they did ask us. They're like, hey, we really want to work with you guys. And we're like, cell phones, because it's all we were working on. But you know what they could do? Since it was under the GPL and the Apache license, they just went off and did their own thing, And they could have used our help. We could have benefited from working with them, but we were so focused on cell phones, we didn't need to worry about that. But since the code is out there, they were able to ship a really cool product without us, which was, in my mind, that's the nature of open source software. But let's continue with the anti-goals. Buy a snake. If you have a snake and a mongoose, nobody's going to come in your office and bother you. Okay? Let's see now. Throw your code over the wall. Keep on release as often as possible, even if nobody gives a crap about it. Even if you don't want anyone to look at it. Just release it because it's harder to release it later from your company. I throw code over the wall every week. I release 3 to 5 projects a week right now. I know 1 in 5 is dead to me. I know 2 in 5 is probably dead to all of you. I know 3 in 5 will probably see no traction. I know maybe 1 matters. I couldn't tell you which one it was going to be, though. And by keeping them churning through the system, it keeps the whole mechanism oiled up. And a company like Google, you need to keep things pushing, pushing, pushing. Otherwise, somebody's going to say, hey, wait a second. We should have another review step. So keep throwing it over the wall. Nobody gets to go on vacation. And that will make you overworked, antisocial. So some company procedures are okay, but honestly, there's so many people out there trying to tell you what to do in a big company. And Google is really good at this, by the way, but there's a lot of people doing it. So we actually have people whose whole job it is to protect you from them and to make them feel good about what you're doing. So that's me. And I guess Josh is looking for a job. This really hurts me. Because up until about 3 years ago, if I died, there were a lot of things like this that would have broken down. But it doesn't matter. There can be only one programmer in the beginning. Most open source projects never grow larger than one programmer. If you look at the actual broad range of products, we always look at Linux. We always look at Samba. Samba has how many primary developers? 4? 5? 10? Wow, that's huge. So that's Samba, right? Most projects have 1 or 2 people, right? X probably has a lot. But when you over-focus on the very big projects who have been around for 19 years, you're going to see the successful ones that have gotten larger. But what you're missing are all the very, very small parts. There's 5 of you working on X. So most of these teams are really small, right? So often, there will be only 1. Anyways, I'm going to speed through these, lock it down. Oh, trolls. Feed the trolls is what Josh said. But you want to feed them to the mongoose. See? Actually, trolls, I banned a ton of trolls. I remember when we were spinning up our developer relations department, there was this one person on one of our lists who was causing a lot of trouble. I said, I just ban them. And they're like, well, why would we want to do that? I'm like, because you're wasting your time thinking about them. Let them go rant off on their own blog. That's what blogs are for. We even have blogging software we give people so they can rant. Let them just go. And they're like, but don't we want to nurture our community? And I'm like, yeah, but not with that guy. He's awful. So, I love going through this backwards. Don't forget to keep releasing. Whenever somebody says throw it over the wall, it drives me crazy because it implies it's bad somehow. This is the base activity of all open source projects, is getting the code out there. Most people are never going to care about your code except for you. But isn't that enough? Right? I mean, that's where a lot of great code comes from. Closed-door meetings. You're going to have a couple of these, but just avoid them. The great thing about most open source projects being 1 or 2 people means they're really small meetings. And you can do it on the phone, You can do it over Skype, you can do it over VC. Once you become big and important, yeah, do it on IRC. It's the right way to do it. But until you do, it's more important that you're meeting at all and talking to each other and deciding where you're going with your project. But you can do that on an email. When projects are small, it's easy, it's fun. It reminds us why we program, right? So this is the first time I've actually given a speech giving the last person's slides. Keep releasing. What was this one again? Is this part of overwork? Yeah. Okay, so unfortunately, I have been at the maximum allowed vacation at Google for the last 5 years. So I don't know what to say about this. I think, unfortunately, it's a community we have chosen the enemy model. We have to have enemies. We have to kill Microsoft. We have to kill this. We have to kill that. We have to break this. We have to... I've never been this guy. I want Android to succeed not because MeeGo has to fail, right? I think MeeGo's great. I mean, I was using a 770, an 800, and an 810. These are fun computers. Computers are still fun, man. They don't have to be hurt for me to be happy about Android's success. They can both be very successful. There's 2 billion cell phones in people's hands right now. A lot of them are going to be transferring over to smartphones. Some of them are going to be Android. Some of them are going to be iPhones. Whatever. And some are going to be MeeGos. A lot of them are going to be old Symbian machines. I mean, why is this bad? I mean, we can talk about corporate strategy until we're blue in the face. But MeeGo doesn't have to lose for Android to be great. Android doesn't have to lose for MeeGo to be great. So that's not what I'm here to say. Keep releasing. And you're going to be your own enemy, right? Companies are the ones that bury themselves all the time, right? You can fail at open source just by having the wrong motivations. There's no end of people who are going to be upset at you, who are going to kick you out of some tree because they disagree with what you do in your code. Who cares? As long as the code's getting released, someone else might find it later and use it. Can we go to my slides now? Wait. Yeah, okay. Here we go. Hi, my name's Chris DiBona. Thank you, Josh. Josh's talk is really good, but thank you for letting me play off it. I appreciate it. Yeah, I know. We should do that everywhere. What do I do for a living? I'm a compliance guy. I care about open source license compliance. I do. Isn't that exciting? It's like 4 people. They're like, oh, God, thank God there's more than one of us. We have like a support group. We meet every Thursday. What's that? No. We all want to work together at some point. Because at some point you always leave a job and you go to the next, like I'll go to HP, but I'll go to Google. And anyway. And I also run a couple of what we call public sector engineering programs. The Open for Questions with Obama, that was my team. And it was a blast, I had this great job. I wrote some stuff and I did some Slashdot and all that junk. Agenda, me, questions. Okay. Whatever. So patches and projects. So give you an idea of the scope of Google. We have 915 release projects to date. Probably 6 of those are just API examples, so keep that in your head. A lot of those you're never going to care about. In fact, I'd say the majority of the projects I've released you all don't care about. But there's somebody who does. Of course, there's probably some small stuff that nobody cares about. But who cares? We release code. We release it often. We do it all the time. We probably have 200 people at any one time putting together patches for outside consumption at different projects. Whether it's Jeremy's work on Samba, which is an obvious, easy one, to the average developer in our security group patching OpenSSL, fixing bugs, simple things, right? And complex things. We're hosting because we feel it's incumbent on us, in that we've received so much value from open source that I used to not say give back, but I like to think of it as a peer relationship, right? Where we try to give you hosting, we try to support infrastructure. So when you heard about the documentation dude who was working on the kernel stuff, we fund a quarter of him. When you're visiting kernel, is kernel.org machinery? Did we do that with you? Yeah, so HP gave us a discount. We paid for it. We try to do little things all the time. We pay for the admin for kernel.org. We pay for bandwidth at Oregon State University, so that's kernel.org, Mozilla. We try to just be there, right? And most people don't know that we do this, but I'm telling you. So, and then we run the summer code, how many people have heard of the summer code? I just love that. Summer code, we've had about 4,000 students go through that. They create on average 3,000 lines of code apiece over the last 6 years. And I see some of our mentors out there. Hi. And so we try to fund groups like the SFLC, like the Free Software Foundation. We do conservatively about $2 million a year in straight direct funding. And that's just been increasing. We release a lot of code. So the money is nice. But the code is in a lot of ways the currency of open source. So we have Android, and I wanted to talk about Android for a bit. Right now, Android is shipping on pretty much every chipset someone's ported it to. We've ported it to OMAP, MSM7K, Snapdragon, and our very first release of Android also had an x86 sort of vendor branch there. So you could run it on netbook in October of 2008. It wasn't great. It wasn't fantastic. It was because we developed for cell phones. But you could run it, and that was really helpful for people who were doing debugging and all the rest. The people who wanted to go off and make unusual devices, they could start hacking immediately, They could go buy an EPC and just start messing around. But that's not where Linux use stops at Google. Andrew talked about how we use Linux in our production systems. We use it for Chrome OS. We have any number of efforts going on. Andrew, how many kernels are we usually qualifying while using another one? It's like 5? I don't know if you're in the room still. He's like, I don't know. So the CELF, Michael Rubin will be here. He can talk about that. But it's like, so we're using Linux a lot. So whenever you're using Google, you're using Linux. Whenever you're using an Android-based cell phone or device or whatever, you're using Linux. And what this means is right now we're probably shipping more Linux than almost anybody. probably by the end of this year, you could say because of Android, that is the most popular Linux shipping today, and maybe in all time, depending on how you count your numbers. So that's pretty exciting, right? And then there was this thing. Oh, by the way, I have shirts. They're the Linux Foundation's 4 shirts. So if you ask good questions, I'll be giving you a shirt. So I'll stop talking soon, and I'll be giving these out. That was not a good question, but it was good timing. Okay. And that's really what it comes down to. Right now, we had this branch. We had released this branch. And by the way, just because our code was booted out of the fork thing on kernel.org doesn't mean we're not releasing code all the time. We're releasing code all the time. And not just because of compliance matters, because it helps people adopt the platform. So we're always releasing code. We had 4 major releases of Android in 2009, corresponding with major operating system dumps, some of which you could say were thrown over the wall. But it was important to do this. And I firmly believe that over time, a lot of the technology we've been working on will make it into the mainstream kernel. I think that we have to do a better job here and there on that. But, I'm okay with that. Because our community sometimes isn't the same community who normally consumes the kernel. It's CE device makers. And this is a weird area for us because Android is targeted at chipset manufacturers, Qualcomm, TI, Intel, da-da-da-da. It's targeted at carriers. It's targeted at handset manufacturers, odd little CE companies doing, video players, ebook readers, you name it. There are factories in China where they'll have an order for X phones, and they'll have an hour of downtime. They're like, well, shit, we'll just ship an Android phone in that hour. I've been in some of these Shenzhen malls in China, and they have like these. I saw an iPhone copy running Android with an iPhone skin on it. It blows your mind, And it's like, it was pink too, which was in a flip phone. But whatever. That's not okay. It's not okay to copy Apple, whatever. But it was weird. And then there are people who you traditionally think of as being open source developers, like Sanogen, who are sort of like this modding community, who want to have their own role of the stuff. And so we have unlocked phones so people can experiment with the rest. But it's like, it's this weird mix of who releases what, when, and to whose. By the way, without Git, this would have been impossible. Git really made Android happen and the propagation of code between these n factorial people possible, because a lot of them, by the way, like the chipset vendors will have a deal with a handset manufacturer who will have a deal with a carrier. And they don't want anyone to talk to each other until they launch. And then they're okay, well, we'll release stuff and all the rest. And sometimes some vendors, ones that aren't actually Google Experience devices, they're like, well, we have to release, we'll release then. Other times, they're like, we want to preserve a marketing surprise. Ooh, surprise. The marketing surprise is probably the biggest enemy, by the way, to open source release, timely open source release. So Android is very complicated. I'm not presenting this as a defense because I don't believe we need a defense. Android is a very successful operating system with thousands of developers working on it all over the world. And it's only getting better every day. So I think we can do a better job of getting it back into the mainline kernel. That said, we try to keep ourselves very close to the mainline so that can become possible. So I hope that'll get better. I'd rather take your questions, though. Anyone? Craig Ross has the microphone. Yeah.
I understand you're working on a slate.
A tablet? There are many tablets being made by many manufacturers.
I'm told since I'm very close to end users.
End users.
Not technical, but the end users.
Right.
Business and consumer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm told if Google were to come out with a slate that has a stylus that you could write and interact and do digital ink, that it would just kill iPad.
We're not in the killing business.
Well, I'm not talking about what your
He's asking about a tablet that may or may not have been announced.
I'm not talking about what your objective is. I'm talking about the likelihood
what you need.
that you would innovate with technology in that direction.
All I can say is I'll take it back to the team. Actually, David from the Android team can take it back to the team. I have no idea what our plans are about the tablet, and if I knew, I couldn't say. So, that said, I've seen Android tablets shipped from other vendors, with styli even. So I would suggest you take a look at what's going on, just type in Android tablet into the internets and see what you find. But I don't have a lot to tell you. We'll take back any suggestions you have, of course, to the team. And you're not alone. A lot of people like styluses. That said, the iPad is very fingery. So, yeah.
So Android
I'm not a good thrower. Well, I don't want to hurt anybody, and then like that. Yeah, Android.
So Google has shipped these, or maybe not Google, but perhaps Motorola has shipped these OMAP 3-based
That's right.
Phones. But actually, in terms of the Linux OMAP upstream code, there have been almost 0 patches coming back from the Android OMAP code back into upstream, not even onto the list.
So have there been no submissions, but the code is there? Because I know that Rebecca and her team have put them onto our android.git.kernel.org.
It's been posted,
areas.
but I mean, from a practical matter, if Google's not going to do the work to actually start submitting those patches and cleaning them up for upstream, I don't see that anybody else is going to do that.
Well,
and so I think I haven't even gotten to the question. So I guess the question is so the question is, I mean, in terms of Google's commitment to at least the Linux kernel, that's really has to come in terms of what can be accepted upstream and working with upstream people, because it's just not enough to post it in the case of
That's
Linux.
correct. It's not. And so the question becomes, how much work is it to get it in?
Well, no, the question becomes, I mean,
and
is
are
Google
we gonna,
actually going to
are we
devote
gonna do that
resources
work?
to do it? Because right now, as far as we can tell, I mean, talking with Rebecca or some of those people right now, Google has not actually allocated resources to do that. So will Google do it?
So we have recs for hiring, for helping with this kind of thing. I've told Jeremy I think it's a very painful job to have to take patches out of these release kernels, repackage them, and put them into the mainstream. If you are a masochist, we are hiring. And I say that jokingly, but it's really, really true. It is hard to take these very interlaced patchworks, pull out the parts that are acceptable and are useful for the mainline kernel. I'm not telling you all of them are, or all of them are of that quality, right? Because sometimes the quality isn't there. It's good enough to ship. It's good enough that it's not going to crash your phone. But also the priorities might be different too. Like, I mean, there's some things we do in the kernels for Android that are specifically for battery life that you would never, ever do in the main line. So how do we pull those out and how do we see those out? We're not good at that yet. So there are recs, though. Rebecca will tell you there are recs if you ask her. But I can find them. But who wants the job?
There are other people who do this, other companies who buy.
Do they actually ship to customers, though? This is going to sound jerky, by the way. We're shipping millions and millions of handsets. We're shipping more in one day than Danger shipped in its entire lifetime.
Well, if you look at, say, Nokia, for example, Nokia is actually taking OMAP code
Right.
from their code base and upstream. They do actually.
Are they mainlining it?
They are actually mainlining.
Okay. Are they shipping to vendors?
They develop at the main line.
Well,
You
that's
know,
good.
I mean,
Then they're probably doing a better job of that than us.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I was going to say.
Right.
Isn't there a side to this of
You can stand up. It's okay.
yeah. Okay, I don't know. I say stand up. Yeah. Well, thank you. So there's a side to this that shouldn't. Why are the developers on the Android side not actually asking help? What's the best way to do this at the start?
You're
You know,
saying
and
we
that-
haven't
that-
done this. I mean, actually, I got to be honest with you. No. They feel pretty burned, right? When they're trying to be pulled into these 3-day-long discussions about what we decided to name a fork, it burns people. I mean, there was a fight over us calling it Dream versus calling it G1. It's infuriating.
I'm talking about like making a technical decision about how you're going to implement something.
They're all mixed up. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. So the point is, we probably don't have enough people working on it. We could probably have more people working on it, and we're open to that. And we're not doing a great job on getting it in the main line. And maybe we're not doing a great job all the time because of staffing and because of our attitude, maybe.
Is it cultural?
There are cultural issues, absolutely. Not background, I'd say cultural. The teams are under incredible pressure to ship. We had 50 carriers shipping 12 different handsets last year, and they all wanted to work with us. And so it takes up a lot of time for a kernel team of less than a bazillion people. So anyways, so we are hiring. And that's not a very satisfying answer for you. But, we got to start somewhere.
What's that symbol that you have on your
it's
slide?
a QR code. We released a piece of software called Zebra Crossing that creates a QR code. If you go there, it goes to this question and answer site, but nobody's doing it here. So, I mean, somebody put up a joke question about what was the name of the cat and alien, Jonesy. but that's not a very useful thing.
Well, it's not compatible with the browser and the Android.
It should be.
Now again, weird display button.
Well, I'll fix that. I'll tell Daniel.
Can I ask you a second question?
I love questions.
I just asked the second question.
Everyone's a joke.
How many people do you have
That's
working?
the third question.
Well, I'm expecting 3 T-shirts. How many?
Go on, come on.
How many people do you have working on Google projects inside Google? You said thousands in the community. How many actually work in Google?
No, for Android, I was saying thousands because it's a combination of the people working at Google, people working at Moto, people working at Qualcomm, people working at HTC, people working at the entire ecosystem of people.
How many in Google itself?
We don't talk about specific staffing levels, but it is hundreds. So,
Thank you.
there's people in the back. Does anyone in the back have a question? Because I feel like I'm neglecting you. Him. And then we'll go back to you. Can you come up and grab a mic, or can we get a mic back to him? Hey, and Craig, take this back with you, will you? So basically, I got here and I saw the forking shirts, and I was like, oh, I have to have all of them for my talk because of what people are going to ask me.
So enough about Android for a second, but you mentioned Google Summer of Code.
I love Summer of Code.
What would be your 2 favorite things about it, and what would be the one thing you would change?
This is like those great questions. Chris, what makes you so great? So thank you for the softball. What do I like about it, and what would I change? I really like the maturity of the community, which is not something you hear very often about open source. But in any given year, we have about 85% incumbent organizations, and they've really gotten to the point where they can handle new students well. And it affects their entire life cycle. They welcome in new people better now than before Summer of Code starting. What do I hate? What would I change? I'm not a hater. What would I change? Well, we raised the stipend for the students. That was nice. There's a part of me that says I wish we could take on more organizations, but I'd be lying to you. I think we've maxed out on the number that we can handle. And more importantly, the number of mentors that can logically address new students who are looking for the program. Because if you look at the Summer of Code, we have about 3,500, 3,600 students who apply every year and put in about 6,000 or 7,000 applications, of which I'd say there's this magic 1,000 number that's acceptable. If you go more than that, and we've done that, we've done 1,200 student years, as you go up, quality goes down, failures go up. Or people passing goes down, whatever you want to count. And we're trying to target sort of this B+ pass-fail ratio in the program because we want to maintain quality, but we don't want to make it that we're failing a lot of people because we feel that's a waste of mentor time. So what would I change? Man, if I had more people to make some of the, this will sound really lame, some of the marketing and identity stuff around it more compelling, prettier, more efficient, Shipping and paying people in 93 countries is really hard, and it's made us a little gun shy. I'd love to give gifts that would probably get stuck in customs, even in Greece, and I can't, What's that? Well, we're paying money, right? But we like to give a nice gift in the beginning and once they succeed. So, but I remember being trapped in Greece waiting for customs, and it's just, I wish that America would change the state sponsors of terrorism to pull Cuba off the list. I'd love to address more Cuban developers, things like that. But I don't know. I'm pretty happy with the program. Now that said, that makes me feel, is it stagnant? Is it not innovating? I don't know. I'd like to do the high school program again. So we're looking into that again for this year. So we'll see what happens. That's why I would change it.
So a question over here.
Hi.
Do you feel that the choice of the Apache license for Android drives fragmentation because derivative code...
Drives what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Fragmentation, because
fragmentation.
derivative code does not have to be contributed.
No, and I'll tell you why. Because if you want to take true advantage of Android, that means you want to support the marketplace and you want to support the developers targeting Android. That goes through a virtual machine, which gives you a lot of flexibility in how you actually lay out your hardware. So, and frankly, most developers, especially the ones with the popular applications, stick to the APIs so that they can be successful across the various versions and hardware instantiations of the platform. We have a couple of tricks we can pull. Like, we don't give you the marketplace unless you match certain standards for the platform, and these are things like have the right number of buttons, have an accelerometer, stuff like that. But that doesn't mean you can't ship Android. That said, if you ship Android without working with us, you have to maintain your own marketplace. You have to do things like that. And that's a choice you'll make. And then that's a choice your users make by going with an off-brand, if you will. But I don't know that I buy that. So there you go. Like when the Nook adopted Android, they had to write their own display driver for the e-ink display. They don't support additional add-on applications. But they still get to take advantage of the Surface Slinger, a lot of the frameworks, a lot of the over-the-air update stuff we made. So they get a lot out of it. So fragmentation is one of the things I don't worry about it much because it's a problem of success, right? People worry about fragmentation when they're losing more than when they're winning. And right now, Android is winning really well. So what we more worry about is quality of API and persisting that. And so can we give you a piece of good advice? If you're targeting Android as an application developer, I'd stick with the 1.5 or 1.6 API levels. And that'll get you covered all the way through 2.1. And that'll give you the vast bulk of functionality, the nice intersection of functionality in most of the phones. And then if you want, you can put it inside the Arcos application marketplace. You can distribute on the web because we allow people to install applications if they really want to, as opposed to being the tastemakers for you. So anyway.
Chris, so you alluded to the question I have, which is, as you said, if you're an application developer, stay with 1.5, 1.6, it'll carry you through 2.1.
Yeah.
Yet with pride, you also mounted that you came up with 4 major releases in the last year. So question is the following. This model is different for Google, right? Google's traditionally web services, so you change stuff in the background. Literally, you and I had the pleasure of having a meeting in a car driving to the CTA train stop, right? Literally a minute before launch, assuming it can compile and run and whatnot, you are known to make changes, which is different than a consumer space where we have packaging, loading, preloading, trying to get stuff out to customers. Then we have to have a sell-in period of time to enjoy the margins and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So the question is, at what point in time do the cultures harmonize? That is, the web services literally throw stuff over the wall up until a minute before going commercially live versus 4 major releases, which suddenly we now have real product conflict, right? 2 products will come out simultaneously, one on 1.5, 1.6, one on 2.1, and we have issues with consumer uptake, Engadget, blah, 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 and you know where we're at. So commentary, thoughts?
So the thought that comes to mind when you talk about that is that, you say, how do you harmonize these 2 worlds? Why? The question is, why do you harmonize them? Is it appropriate to harmonize them? I don't think that the mentality at Google of doing thrice weekly updates of the indexes and the ranking functions and the cross-global ranking function updates and the way we do ad matching and targeting and all the rest, I don't think it's the same business as creating a cell phone operating system, frankly. I mean, there's some similarities. Yes, they're on computers, blah, 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 but I think they're not the same business. And I don't think that you want to harmonize them too much. I think you want to think about, okay, what are people putting in their pockets and carrying with them 24 hours a day, right? And they're a great way of getting to those web services, but they are different businesses. And it reflects that in how we do the hiring for that team. It reflects how it started, with the purchase of the very small Android startup 4 years ago. So I don't think they will be harmonized. Now, that said, what you're really then asking is how does Google manage its corporate structure so that we can properly reward people inside this, what may be a different-looking team. But Google's a big place. We have different-looking teams all the time. And that is a challenge, but that's our challenge.
We have time for one last question, Chris. So,
and I always get the last one. So, in the interest of fairness of what I asked the Migo guys, I will first thank you for the Android list of proprietary components being substantially shorter than the Migo ones, but you still have a list. So, what are you guys doing, especially at the .so level, with the interface libraries to the hardware that are proprietary? I'm running a free software Android, but my GPS doesn't work because it needs proprietary software. My camera doesn't work, etc. What's the status of getting those replaced? And going forward to new platforms, when those things change, how do we track that so we have free software to drive those devices?
So I think the list right now is at about 10 components, not kernel components, I might add, but user space level management components of these different parts. And every iteration of the operating system has gotten a little better. I see. And I have sympathy for Imad. I don't know if he's still in the room. I never say things like it's 100% open source unless I've looked at the code myself, because things move so fast sometimes. We've hit some interesting barriers in the cell phone business. One of the things I told Brad earlier is that even if those 10 components were open source, and we're working towards this, there would be a whole other section of the chip that's running Qualcomm's radio software. And that radio software is incredibly complex, and people like Harold Welty are trying to replicate it, but I think they're going to have a huge uphill battle regulatory-wise. So there's a purity there, I think, that can't exist in a modern chipset yet. And I know you're an optimist about this. I don't know if I share your optimism, but I'm willing to entertain it. So what we see when people adopt Android is they look at those proprietary bits and they decide if they're going to have more proprietary bits or if they're going to write their own replacements for them. We're trying to minimize them. And over time, I hope that I'll be successful. But sometimes it is Sisyphean, right, where you nail down that calibration routine and then this thing pops up over here because all users decide they want Blender attachments, and the Blender attachment vendor wants to be the only Blender attachment vendor in the whole world. And these, not that there's really Blenders running Android. Microwaves, TVs, sure, but not Blenders that I know of. But please, make one. I'm not trying to make light of what you're saying here. Yeah, it is. I don't need to tell you. Anyway, so, oh gosh, I'm going to hit somebody and I'm going to get in trouble. What's that? Oh, okay. Well, I'd like to get him back there. I'll figure something out about that. So, am I done? Is my time up?
We do. Your time is up.
Okay.
But I think you're forgetting one more thing.
Oh, so you are the smart people. You stayed late. You didn't skip Jim's keynote because we're going to help forward Brad's work, actually, among other things. We're going to give everyone here a Nexus 1 phone. It's fully unlocked. It's on the T-Mobile frequencies.
You just look at this guy. The T-shirts, the phones. He's just pandering. Look at this guy.
But here's the thing. It's only for people who are here today, and we're going to give them out after the keynote's finished. So see us over there. If you're not here, though, you don't get it. So call it an attendance prize. You give an attendance prize. So, of course, the luckiest person, I guess, is the one who's gamed it, so they showed up just now. That's your remote. I'll give away these shirts in the back. Sorry, front people, you've gotten your share. And I'll see you at the tables when we're giving them out after his talk.
My very, very short wrap-up. Thank you very much, Chris. You don't need to run. You'll all get one. I just want to make a brief announcement.
We should mention one thing. There was some worry about there being a couple more people here than we anticipated. We have a plan in place that would involve shipping it to you, but we did bring enough for everybody who was registered at the time.
Okay.
So if I find one, I'll grab it.
So we'll get them to you. One quick note, the Korean government hosts an open source software world challenge this year. There's more information at the NEPA booth at the garden level. So we really support this event. We're trying to get more folks from Asia involved. I'll note that that's a Linux Foundation product, and Chris paid full retail. So that's right.